Hey guys, it's Omer from MMOs.com, and I'm doing another quick weekly news recap of all major MMO news and announcements the week ending July 11th, 2016. This is episode number 51 of the recap, and the first bit of news this week is that Riders of Icarus from Nexon officially launched into open beta this week. No more head start nonsense, so anyone who wants to play the game can play. The launch looks to be a pretty huge success too, as the game was getting about 800 to 2,000 concurrent players during the head start program, which is open only to those who bought the Founders Packs, and the game hit about 17,000 concurrent players yesterday. The huge influx of players jumping in to try Riders of Icarus likely won't last fully, but it does show that there's a huge demand out there for an MMO. Given the game's success in Korea, it'll probably do pretty decent here in the West, but time will tell whether they can maintain those crazy high numbers or not. Up next, Evolve Stage 2 just relaunched as a free-to-play title this week. It was originally known as Evolve and launched back in February of last year as a buy-to-play title, but unfortunately it did lose steam pretty quickly and only averaged about 100 users on Steam in June of 2016. And now that it went free-to-play, it's hitting a bit over 50,000 concurrent players during peak hours. So going from 100 concurrent to over 50,000 is a tremendous accomplishment. These numbers will likely decrease going forward, but it should still stabilize at a much healthier base than the 100 it had before the free-to-play transition. The F2P relaunch shows the power of free-to-play. It literally breathed life into an otherwise dead game. And it's a fun game worth checking out. It's a unique 4v1 shooter, so 4 players against 1 player who controls the monster. They gotta track him down and hunt him while the monster has to kind of avoid them and get stronger and then eventually defeat the players. Moving right along, we have another new launch this week, something probably everyone has already tried, myself included. Pokemon Go launched this week to much fanfare. And since its launch, it's sitting at both the top free-to-play games list in terms of popularity and the top grossing list on both Android and iOS. Nintendo's augmented reality mobile game is actually quite basic and pretty straightforward, but it's fun nonetheless. It's given a lot of gamers an excuse to go outside, so good job Nintendo. And if you think about it, this would actually be the first Pokemon MMO. And it's pretty funny to think of it that way because I've been dreaming of a Pokemon MMO for literally forever, but we never got a proper one. With some tweaks and updates though, I think Pokemon Go will remain pretty popular. It's just not the Pokemon MMO I envisioned back in the day. The game's success though speaks volumes about the power of the brand, and just to illustrate how big this launch is, Nintendo's stock price increased 10% the day after the game launched. 10% in a single day is a pretty big deal, and just shows how big Pokemon Go is. Next up, we have Naruto Online, which will be launching in English on July 20th. It's worth mentioning because we've had other Naruto Online style games. This is a browser-based game as well, but the other Naruto games we've had were all just knockoffs, unlicensed, garbage Chinese games. This is a Tencent developed, officially licensed Naruto game, which will be launching on July 20th. It will be browser-based, and it kind of looks like other Naruto browser games, but at least we know it'll have some quality to it because, again, Tencent is making it. They're a pretty huge company. But given that it's browser-based, I'm afraid it'll probably end up being pay to win, but we'll find out when it launches on the 20th in English. Up next, some industry news from Turbine, the company that makes Lord of the Rings Online and Dungeons & Dragons Online. It looks like the Boston-based studio will be transitioning to a free-to-play mobile development studio after a round of layoffs. The official word is that DDO and Lord of the Rings Online will continue as is right now, but given that there's been layoffs at those teams, it's probably not going to become a big focus for New Turbine. New Turbine is going to be focused on churning out mobile games. So it's going to be a huge negative for fans of DDO and Lord of the Rings Online. Those games are probably on their way to death, but it won't be immediate. Props to Erhan for calling out the game's Turbine's demise in an article he wrote for MMOs.com called "Is Turbine Running Out of Steam?" And in that article, he basically called it, and even called the fact that Turbine would refocus on mobile games. But anyway, rest in peace, Turbine, the way we knew you. I mean, Turbine was pretty influential in the MMO landscape. I mean, since 1999 with the launch of Asheron's Call, I mean, they were one of the first big MMORPGs out there. They were pioneers, but now they'll just be another mobile studio. Next up, some news about an older game that I forgot to cover earlier. I remember Combat Arms Line of Sight, the sequel to Nexon's Combat Arms that's been teased as coming soon forever. Well, apparently it's going to launch and on Steam relatively soon in September as simply Line of Sight. Combat Arms has been dropped from the name, and it looks like they're not affiliated with Nexon in any way going forward. Apparently Nexon said that the game didn't meet their brand's expectations, but the developers are looking to push the game for a release on their own. And given the success of Combat Arms, I wonder if we'll ever see an actual sequel or not. I mean, the game had a shit ton of hackers back in the day, but it was still really popular, so maybe we'll see a Combat Arms 2 eventually. But yeah, Line of Sight is launching sometime in September on Steam, so keep an eye out for it. And the video you're seeing in the background is from, I guess, the South American version of the game, which was somewhat playable in closed beta earlier. So that's why it's all in Spanish. Next up, we have more free weekends and free time for Atllas Reactor, the turn-based strategy game from Tryon Worlds. Up until July 17th, the game will be free to play, and anyone can play any of the free launches, which are the game's heroes. entirely for free. The game was originally supposed to be free to play, then they decided to make it buy to play. But since they launched the buy to play title, they've had so many free weekends and free events that it seems like at this point it might as well go free to play. But it's actually a pretty fun game. If you haven't played it, I say it's worth checking out. And before somebody calls me out, it's still technically in early access. Up next, some very unusual news from Shroud the Avatar, the game being developed by Richard Garriott, and the game that's raised about $2 million so far on crowdfunding websites. Apparently, Lord British, or Richard Garriott himself, is selling his blood for $5,000. Yes, he actually is selling vials of his own blood, 6 vials to be exact, for about $5,000 each, in hopes of raising $30,000 to fund the game's development. So yes, literally his blood, sweat, and tears are going into this game because he is selling his blood to fund the game's development. It's obviously some kind of publicity stunt, but it's still kind of interesting. You could buy the man's blood. I mean, Richard Garriott is a really rich dude anyway. He was one of the first private citizens to go to space. He paid like $20-30 million just to do that. So he could obviously afford to fund the game himself, but it does seem kind of odd and an interesting way to raise awareness of his game, or raise money for his game nonetheless. Move right along, Blade & Soul is going to be launching their Play Together servers on July 14th, where basically it's going to be linked servers, not Play Together servers, but you can play together on these linked servers. And on the linked servers, it'll actually be linking world realms together, so when you're wandering around outside town, you can see other players from other servers. And it's just trying to create a more full experience, so when you wander around, you'll see more players. It'll make the game world feel more alive. It'll be launching on July 12th, which is tomorrow. There will be 6 NA and 6 EU servers, and each cluster of servers will contain 2 or 3 servers, and that seems to be what they're going for. And they will also be selling paid server transfers sometime in the near future. It's not a bad idea, though, to combine these servers. I mean, one bigger server is more ideal because it just makes the world feel more alive. Moving right along, Star Trek Online Agents of Yesterday officially launched this week. It's the latest update to Star Trek Online and introduces quite a bit of content to the game, including new episodes, new starships, a new specialized tree, new specialized task force missions, and a whole bunch of the original voice actors from the original series. Much of the content is centered around the original series because it is the 50th anniversary of the original Star Trek series, a series I actually have not watched. I've seen all the Star Trek series, but not the original. I'm actually a big Trekkie, so I will probably go back and watch those. The next and last bit of news this week comes from Smite. Yeah, I know we don't talk about Smite too much, but they actually introduced a new character, the El Rang Shen. But more importantly, they also launched a Mac version of their client for the first time. Again, we don't talk too much about Smite, but Smite's actually the most popular MOBA, likely after League, Dota, and it's probably very close to HOTS, if not bigger than HOTS. I'm not sure which one's bigger, but Smite is doing really well. Since launching on Steam, it gets over 10,000 concurrent users pretty regularly, so it's doing well. Anyway, guys, that's it for MMO News this week. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the podcast. Later, guys.